All right, so today's video is really special to me. I'm going to be sharing mom's recipes. So I've shared this in other videos before. My mom gifted my brothers and I, after we got married, this cookbook, and this is full of all kinds of recipes from our childhood that we loved and she made often. So I'm going to share a few recipes out of this cookbook that are some of my favorite, and my family has really enjoyed them over the years since I've made them. These are definitely kind of old school, but I just think there's something so special and kind of nostalgic about those like back in the day recipes that your grandma or your mom used to make. And I wouldn't call these like uber healthy meals, but as I've always said, like balance is key. And I don't make these recipes very often, but when I do, they're just so comforting to my soul. And I know that my family enjoys them, and I hope that you enjoy them too. Okay, I just had to show you a close-up of this cookbook. It says, Mom's favorite recipes. Thy word is a lamp unto my feet and a light unto my path. My mom loved, she still loves lighthouses, but she went through a period of time where people were buying her lighthouses all the time. You know, we're drawn to the light. And I think that that's why she really liked them and appreciated them. So this first recipe that I'm going to share with you, when I think about like my top 5 favorite recipes of my childhood, or that makes me think of my childhood, this one is on the top 5, and it's called Hungry Jack. I don't know if you've ever heard of Hungry Jack casserole. I searched and searched, like when, who invented this? Like, where did Hungry Jack casserole come from? But I couldn't find anything. So if you know where this recipe came from originally, I would love to know. It's just a really simple casserole of like ground beef, some onions, you throw in some pork and beans, and then just some other seasonings like barbecue sauce, and I think it has a little bit of sugar, brown sugar, and then you top it with Pillsbury biscuits and let it bake in the oven and put some cheese on top of it, and that's it. But there's just something so yummy about that filling with the biscuits. It's delicious. So what I love about this recipe is the only thing that you really need to prep is the onion. I'm just going to chop up this half an onion that I had in the refrigerator. Everything else is we're just going to dump the ingredients in, except for we do have to cook the ground beef. So I'm going to get this onion chopped up and diced, and then we're going to head over to the stove. All right, so I'm going to add a little bit of olive oil to the pan, just about a tablespoon. And then we're going to add in a half a cup or so of this chopped up yellow onion. And I'm also going to add this pound of ground beef. This is lean ground beef. Okay, so I'm just gonna cook and crumble the beef until it's no longer pink and the onions are softened. All right, so now that our beef is all cooked, I'm just gonna add a paper towel to the pan just to sop up some of that extra grease. So I just throw it in the paper towel, and then I just take my tongs and kind of run it around the edges, and this will help soak up all that extra grease, and then you don't have to pour it into a cup and it just be a dangerous situation. All right. Okay, and then next we're gonna add in just a few ingredients. I'm going to do a little bit of salt, about a teaspoon or so. And I'm also going to do a little bit of pepper. My mom actually doesn't call for pepper, but because our family loves it so much, I'm going to add it. And then I've got one 16-ounce can of baked beans. This is just my favorite brand. The recipe only calls for one 16-ounce can, but I'm actually going to add a half of another 16-ounce can because I like it to be on the beany side. I definitely like the beans. So I'll just add half of that can. Perfect. We're also going to do 3/4 cup of barbecue sauce. And then we're going to do 2 tablespoons of brown sugar. This just gives it a slight sweetness and some richness because brown sugar has molasses. And this is pretty much it for the filling. So we're just going to stir this together until it's well combined and the beans and barbecue sauce have a chance to heat through. I mean, seriously, already, I'm just like, I feel like I'm in my mom's kitchen. Okay, and while this heats through, we're gonna head back over to the cutting board and get our biscuits prepared. Okay, so we're gonna be using just the regular Grand's Southern Homestyle biscuits. We're not doing the extra flaky ones, but we're gonna use this whole can. And I'm just gonna do what my mom did. She would just cut the biscuits in half. You can definitely quarter them and then just put the pieces on top of the filling, but I'm gonna do it how mom did it. All right, so I'm just gonna take these biscuit halves and I'm just gonna lay them right on the top there, and I'm just gonna work my way around the entire dish. And they don't have to be touching So I'll probably just make sure they're about a 1/4 inch apart. So at this point, I'm gonna pop this into our 350-degree oven, and we're gonna bake this for about 30 minutes, but we really wanna bake it until the top is golden brown, but also the underneath of the biscuit is cooked. So doesn't this look so beautiful and delicious? So I'm actually gonna add some shredded cheese over the top of this, and we're gonna pop it back into the oven just until the cheese melts, and then we get to dive in. Okay, I don't think I've ever been more excited to try a recipe. Like, obviously I've had this before, but in these videos, like, I can't even wait to sink my teeth into this, and it smells so good, like home to me. It reminds me of my mom and just the meals that she used to make for us kids and our family. So the biscuits are cooked perfectly, and then I like to add the cheese at the very end, like when it's done cooking. I'll put the cheese on top and put it back into the oven for 5 more minutes because I like the cheese to be a little bit gooey, but my mom will actually put the cheese on when the biscuits are raw. So when it comes out of the oven, the cheese is kind of crispy on top. So whatever your preference is, I just like the cheese to be a little bit soft. Okay, we're gonna give this a try. If you want a recipe that's gonna remind you of like the olden days, or the olden days to me in the 70s, this Hungry Jack. I mean, it is so delicious and cozy and comforting. I mean, that filling alone, you could just make a pot of that and eat that like almost like a chili. It is just perfect. Like the flavors are perfect. Has that little bit of hint of barbecue sauce in there. I mean, moms knew what they were doing back in the day, especially when they had big families. All right, so the next recipe we are going to be making out of our cookbook is called Sunday chicken. I actually haven't had this recipe for years. I maybe have made it for my husband one time early on when we were first married before we had our daughter. The ingredients are so simple. A couple of cans of cream of chicken or mushroom soup, some Fritos, cheese, chicken, and onion. Like, so basic and simple, but I do remember as a kid loving it, and it was when my mom would make it, it was always a hit. Our family would be so excited to have that meal for dinner. And she even says at the very bottom of the page, this was a great recipe when our kids were little. So I'm excited to try this again and make this. I don't think I'm gonna make any changes. The only thing I am gonna do is I'm gonna saute the onion because I feel like I don't like putting raw onion into the oven. I like to kind of brown it up a little bit. I feel like it really brings out the flavor and the sweetness. So we're gonna get over to the cutting board and get our onion chopped up and then throw this casserole together because literally this is gonna come together so quickly. I'm excited to share it with you. I think you're really gonna enjoy it. She hears the butter sizzling. She's hoping something will drop. I don't have anything for you. All right, our onions are nice and browned. Those look so good. I probably got them a little bit browner than I would normally do, but that's okay. I still think they're gonna be delicious. So we're gonna add a couple of ingredients to this bowl here. We're gonna start with our cream of chicken and mushroom soup. I like the combination of the cream of chicken and mushroom both. So I'm gonna add both of these into the bowl. And we are not gonna be diluting this with any milk or water, just the soup. All right, and then next we're gonna add in our onion. And then we're also gonna do, I've got just a package of sharp cheddar cheese. I'm gonna use 1 cup in the soup mix, and then we're gonna use the other 1 cup on top. So I'll go ahead and add 1 cup in here. I'm just gonna kind of eyeball it. That looks about good enough. And then I've got 4 cups of chicken. This is just slow cooker chicken breast that I cooked this morning, and I just chopped it up into little cubes. You can also shred it, or you could even do like a rotisserie chicken or leftover chicken if you have that on hand. This is so versatile. And then I'm just gonna mix this all together until it's fully combined. And this is a good time too if you want to add in some other seasonings like Italian seasoning, paprika, you could do garlic powder, you can throw it into here. You can really just make this your own. You could even do taco seasoning if you want those flavors. Okay, I'm gonna grab my casserole dish so we can get this assembled. All right, so I've got my 9 by 13 inch baking dish. I've sprayed with nonstick cooking spray, and I've got my whole bag of corn chips here. I'm gonna crush these, not super fine. I definitely want there to still be some chunks in there. And then I'm gonna lay down about 2 cups in the bottom of my pan here. All right, and then next I'm gonna top my corn chips with all of this chicken mixture. I'll spread it out nice and smooth, and then I'm gonna top it with the rest of the Fritos and the last bit of the cheese over here. All right, so I've got my oven set at 350, and I'm gonna pop this in there for about 45 minutes until the cheese is melted and it's bubbly and hot. All right, I couldn't leave well enough alone. I had to top it with a little bit of green onion just because I wanted it to look pretty. I love adding greens to pretty much everything. The entire time this was baking, I was like, yeah, this is gonna be delicious. This makes me so happy. It's so meaty with all of that chicken in there. All you need really is like a side salad or maybe some sauteed green beans or a can of green beans if you really want to go simple. This is fantastic. I'm so excited for you to try this. You'll have to let me know if you do or if you end up adding anything different to it. Oh, and I did want to mention, I only cooked this for 35 minutes because I started to really smell like that toastiness, and I opened the oven and I was like, okay, it's done. So watch your times. It's at 400 degrees. You could knock the temperature down and cook it for that full 45, so like at 350 for 45 minutes, but the 35 minutes at 400 was perfect, and I feel like it's nice and hot on the inside and it's perfectly toasty on the top here. In terms of like the Hungry Jack, this one is ticking first right now for sure. All right, so the next recipe we're gonna be making is these harvest potatoes. Basically, these are like funeral potatoes. If you've ever had funeral potatoes, it's a combination of hash browns, some kind of cream of something, whether it's chicken or cream of mushroom, cheese, sour cream, and it's baked in a casserole dish. I don't know where the whole harvest part came from because it doesn't sound very harvesty to me, but we're gonna go with it because it is Mom's recipes. The only bummer thing is I do not have cornflakes. That is what's supposed to go over the top, but I do have buttery crackers. So I'm gonna do the crushed buttery crackers and I'll mix in the butter and that will be our topping. And then the other thing is my mom's recipe on here says to heat the oven at 300 degrees and bake it for an hour and a half. That's a long stinking time to be baking a casserole, especially something so simple. So I'm actually gonna do 350 and I'm gonna bake it for, I don't know, 35 to 45 minutes. We'll kind of see how it all like cooks up and melts and comes together, but that's what I'm gonna do. And I'm also gonna saute the onion because you know, like in our other recipe, I had to have those onions sauteed before I put them in the casserole. So I'm gonna do that. But other than that, these potatoes are so delicious. If you've never had like cheesy hash brown potato casserole or funeral potatoes, you are in for a treat. These are awesome. All right, so we are ready to put together our harvest potatoes. I've got my onions going over here on the stove. I'm just gonna show you. It's about a half a cup of chopped up yellow onion with 1 tablespoon of butter, and I'm just gonna saute those until they're golden brown. And then meanwhile, I've got 1 32-ounce bag of hash browns. These are almost thawed out. So I think I discovered why my mom actually cooked them at 300 degrees for an hour and a half, because she put hers in completely frozen. So these are almost all the way thawed out. So I'm still gonna stay with my temperature that I was talking about earlier. So we're gonna add in 3/4 cup of melted butter. And then I've got 1 cup of sour cream. And I've actually made this without sour cream. I've forgotten it before and it is still delicious. So if you don't have sour cream and you can't get to the store, you can still make these potatoes and they will be delicious. And then we've got just 1 can of cream of chicken soup. Just add that in. And this is going to be undiluted. We're not going to add any water to this or anything. I'm also going to add in 1.5 teaspoons of seasoned salt. The recipe just calls for salt, but I thought this would give it a little more flavor. I'm also going to add in a little bit more cracked black pepper because our family really likes pepper. I'm even going to add more. And then we're going to add in 2 cups of shredded sharp cheddar cheese. You can use any kind of cheese really that you have on hand. The sharp cheddar just gives it that much richer of a flavor. And then we've got our onions. They are completely golden brown. That's how you want them. So, funny story, I actually thought that they called them funeral potatoes because there is so much cheese and butter and sour cream and basically naughty ingredients that it put you in the grave. Like, it was just so fattening that it just killed you over. And that's why it was funeral potatoes. Because I don't think I've ever been to a funeral where they have served funeral potatoes. Maybe I just didn't go to a lot of funerals when I was a kid. I don't know, but even the ones as an adult, usually there's just like cookies or just very simple things, but I've never went to one that had like a big, huge feast of food. But I have had this several times at church potlucks, and of course my mom would make this often, and it was definitely a staple potato dish in our home when I was growing up. So we're just gonna get this all mixed together. I'm actually gonna get a bigger spoon because that's just not working for me. And you can also use like cream of mushroom soup. You could do cream of celery soup. Oftentimes people have, you know, a stock of different cream of whatever soups. And so you could probably use just about any kind and it would be delicious in here. Okay, this is ready to go into our casserole dish, but first I have to get my breadcrumb mixture mixed up. So like I said, this recipe calls for 2 cups of cornflakes, but I don't have cornflakes, so I'm gonna do these buttery crackers, and I'm just using this brand. This is what I had on hand, but you can do like Ritz, but I only had like 7 or 8 of them, and they're pretty good size, but I still need another cup of crumbs. And so I had some panko breadcrumbs, so I'm just gonna add a cup of that to this and mix it together, and it will be just fine. So you can really get creative here, as long as it's not like a sugary cereal. You could probably use just about anything with a really mild kind of breadcrumb flavor, or even just do breadcrumbs. So we'll add 1 cup of panko crumbs, and I think that this is gonna be really good because the panko crumbs are so light and crispy, and then with the buttery crackers, I think I might be onto something. Okay, and then we're gonna add in, I've got a 1/4 cup of melted butter, and I'm just gonna pour this right into the bag and smush everything up so I don't have to dirty a dish. I'll just seal this puppy off here and give it a good shake. Okay, so let's get our casserole dish. Okay, so as you can see, I just sprayed this with some nonstick cooking spray, and then I'm just gonna add all of this to the bottom of the pan and spread it out into a nice even layer. All right, and then next we're gonna add our breadcrumbs over the top. Same thing, just spread it out into a nice even layer. I'm realizing I ate pretty good when I was a kid. I mean, maybe it wasn't always the healthiest, but for the most part, my mom actually cooked pretty healthy. I feel like she really didn't do a lot of the cream of soups and rich dishes like this very often. We had a lot of salads, I will tell you that. My mom was the queen, or is the queen still, of a good green salad, and you would always find a big bowl of salad at our dinner table. Always, like, it was just expected. Where's the salad? Okay, so we're gonna put this in the 350-degree oven, and like I said, we're gonna bake it for about 35 to 45 minutes, maybe a little bit longer, just depends on how well it cooks in the center. We just wanna make sure it's nice and bubbly and golden brown on top. All right, check this out. See if I can get it to focus. Oh my gosh, that little crust on top. It smells so wonderful in here. Like, it smells like the holidays, like Easter or Thanksgiving, and this truly would be a great side dish for any of those special holidays, but especially for a church potluck or a funeral. If you're going to a funeral and somebody wants you to bring something, this would be a great dish because everyone loves potatoes and cheese and in a creamy sauce, like yum. Okay. Oh my gosh. I completely forgot how freaking amazing these potatoes are. That crispy, buttery cracker on top. I mean, it just melts in your mouth. Thank you, Mom, for putting all of these great recipes in a book for us to enjoy and get to pass down to our kids and their kids' kids. Like, I just think these recipes are so special. Like, they literally touch my heart. All right, so this next recipe is going to be a sweet treat. And this was a recipe that my mom would make often when she would have company or if she wanted to make something sweet, but that didn't take a lot of work. So this is called apple Kuchen, or at least that's what I always called it growing up. It's actually pronounced apple Kuchen because it's a German dessert. And I just found that out a couple days ago because I thought, I better tell my friends how this is actually pronounced. And it's not apple Kuchen, but it will always be that to me because that's how my mom always said it. It's just such an easy dessert, like kind of a dump and bake recipe. It's really unique. It has yellow cake mix, coconut, it has sour cream and apples, and a couple of other things that are just really simple pantry staple ingredients. So this is what we're going to be making, and I hope you guys really enjoy this. To start out here, I have myself a nice big bowl. I have a pastry cutter. If you don't have a pastry cutter, you can use a fork, or you can even put this in your food processor to blend up the butter and the cake mix. So I'm going to be adding some yellow cake mix, and I'm just going to dump in just the mix. We're not going to be adding any of the ingredients that it calls for on the back of the box. We're just going to do just the powder mix. Without the bag, of course. And then I have 1 stick of butter. I just cubed this to make it a little bit easier for me. This is cold butter. It doesn't have to be super cold, but I would definitely make sure that it's not room temperature. You want it to have a little bit of firmness to it. So we'll add that in. And I'm just going to take my pastry cutter and just go in and break up the butter until basically it has like little small pea-sized butter pieces in there. Okay, man, that was quite the workout. So I've got my butter, just little like pea-sized pieces. Some of them are a little bit bigger, and that's totally fine. Okay, so we've got our 9 by 13 inch baking dish. I'm not going to grease this because we have plenty of butter in here. So I'm gonna pour this mixture into our pan. And I should probably let you know that I did heat our oven to 350 because that's the temperature we're gonna need it at. And I'm just gonna take my spatula and just kind of smooth this out a little bit until it's kind of a single layer, somewhat even. If you need to kind of shake the pan a little bit. Again, it does not have to be perfect, just so you don't have any large mounds of cake mix. And then we have a 1/2 cup of coconut. So I actually had on hand these coconut chips from Trader Joe's. They're unsweetened, which is totally fine. And I put them in the food processor until basically they were just kind of little fine, small chips. So I'm gonna add this right over the top of our cake mix. And you don't have to do the coconut. If you don't like coconut, you can definitely omit this. I'm just gonna take my spatula and just kind of press this mixture down in our pan to kind of compact it. All right, so that looks pretty good. So I'm gonna bake this at 350, like I said, for just 10 minutes, and then we're gonna pull it out and we're gonna put on a couple more ingredients. All right, while that bakes, we just have a few ingredients to pull together. I've got a 1/2 cup of sugar. I'm just gonna add this to a small bowl here. And then we're gonna add in 1 teaspoon of ground cinnamon. And I'm just gonna get this mixed up until the sugar and the cinnamon is well combined. That looks good, and we'll just set that right over there. All right, and then in the second bowl, I've got 1 cup of sour cream. I'm just gonna add that in. Should probably get a spoon. And then we're gonna crack in 2 egg yolks. I used to have a little egg white separator that my mom gifted me years ago, and it was so 70s. It was like yellow, but it broke, and I've just always went back to this. Oops, what am I doing? Okay, you get the point, right? Egg yolks in here, egg whites in here. We're only going to use the egg yolks. See, I can't talk and describe at the same time. All right, let's separate out this guy, and then we're going to add in our egg yolk. I know this looks so weird, but I'm telling you, this mixture on top of everything, it's almost like a cream cheese, only it's not cream cheese. It's just delicious. Okay, so we're gonna mix this up until it's nice and combined. I would love to know if any of you are German or you remember this recipe growing up, or if it's something you still have. I didn't even bother to ask my mom, like, where did you get this recipe? It was probably at some church potluck is what I'm guessing, because this definitely is a church potluck kind of dessert. All right, that looks good, so we'll set that over there. Okay, I had to take a little break because I pulled my cake out of the oven, and it doesn't really look much different, but you can kind of see the butter has started to kind of separate and melt down. This really just, that 10 minutes in the oven just helps set the mixture on the bottom first before we add the rest of the ingredients. All right, so we are back to the chopping block, and I've got a couple of apples. These are Fuji apples. You can do Granny Smith. You can really do any kind of apple that you like. These are just on sale, and they work just as good, I believe, as any apple. That Granny Smith might be a little more tart, but these work perfect. So I'm just gonna get these peeled, and then I'm gonna slice the apple into really thin apple slices. So the first thing that we're gonna do is I'm just gonna take my apple slices and I'm just gonna lie them on top of this cake mix. I mean, you could probably just scatter them on top of here, but I like to put them in a single layer. I just think it looks pretty when you cut into it, but by all means. Plus, I think that having a single layer will just ensure that the apples cook properly. As a matter of fact, I probably won't even use all of these apples that I've sliced, which is just fine because then I can just snack on them. And really the recipe that my mom has written out is you want about 2.5 cups of sliced apples. Kind of gauge that when you're picking out your apples. Mine were probably on the bigger side. All right, and then next I'm gonna take my cinnamon sugar mixture and I'm just gonna sprinkle this over the top of our apples. I wanna make sure that that's mixed up. Okay, and then next, if you haven't already guessed, this is gonna go over the top of our apples. So it's kind of thick, so I'm just gonna kind of run it along the center and then we can spread it out as we need to. And this does not have to be perfect because as this cooks and the juices from the apple and the sugar kind of melt in there, it will kind of create enough liquid on top to bring this all together. So this part does not have to be perfect. As long as you don't have like a huge clump of sour cream and egg yolk, you're gonna be fine. It's looking so good and just reminds me so much of my childhood. When my mom would make this, we were always like, oh, are you making apple Kuchen? All right, that is good enough. Okay, so we are gonna put this back into the 350-degree oven and we're gonna bake this for 25 minutes. Okay, our dessert is done and I'm ready to try it. It smells so good in here. Okay, so disclosure, if you are going for the most beautiful dessert, this isn't gonna win the prize. Like, it's not very pretty looking. And I feel like, you know, back in the 70s, some of those recipes are really odd looking, but they were delicious. And this is how this one is. So when you serve this to your guests, it's kind of funny because when they take their first bite, it's like, whoa, this is amazing, but it doesn't necessarily look very pretty. Anyway, I just wanted to share that with you. Like, it doesn't always come out the most beautiful, but it is super yummy. This definitely tastes like fall, for sure, but you could serve this any time of the year. It is absolutely delicious. You could definitely serve this with vanilla ice cream, but I think it's rich enough. Maybe a little whipped cream just to like, I don't know, make it look prettier. If you have not tried apple Kuchen, because that's what I'm gonna call it, I'm telling you, you are absolutely gonna love it, especially if you like those warm kind of cinnamon flavors. And then that vanilla with the cake mix. My mom is gonna be so happy to see that I posted this recipe. Well, as always, I really enjoyed spending time with you in my kitchen today. I hope that you enjoyed my mom's recipes and you give them a try because they are so delicious and just fun to make, and maybe it'll remind you of maybe your mom, or maybe you had a mom figure in your life that kind of brings back those special memories. So don't forget, all of the recipes can be found in the descriptions. I have links for all of those. And if you're new here, I would love for you to be part of my YouTube family. Make sure to subscribe and tap the little bell that will notify you every time I post a new video. I hope that you have a really blessed week, and we will see you next time.